Hello, and welcome to Curious Casefiles. And I'm trying not to laugh at something I'll tell you in a minute. If you've been here before, you know who I am. If you've not, I'm Lisa.
And I'm Jamie.
And we're normally three, but today is July the 4th, so Danielle's off celebrating their independence somewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe on a UFO getting probed.
Yeah,
again.
or she's been abducted by a Bigfoot with breasts.
Yeah. We saw that, Kenneth, what we were laughing at. Kelly said in the comments that the Bigfoot that we've got in the intro has got breasts. And yes, it has. I just looked and it actually does. So it's a she. And we need a name for her now. We need a Bertha, maybe? Bertha the Bigfoot. Oh, yeah, so Danielle's off having ribs somewhere. And apparently she's something to do with hot balls as well, she told me. I don't know.
That make it so really bad.
Yeah,
I think she said that was hot as balls, Lisa, not like she's having ribs and hot balls.
She did say she was having ribs and hot balls. That's exactly what I heard. That's what I heard, and that's what's happening. Yeah. So, if you were here last week, you will know that I wrote an amazingly long script yet again. So it was too long. So we had to split DB Cooper into two. And we're going to be going over the suspects this week, of which there are many. We're not going to go over every single one because some of them are like really like far-fetched and no. But we're going to go over all the main suspects. There's a couple there that actually could be. Yeah. So we'll see what you think.
To say, if you haven't seen,
if you've not seen part one, you need to go and you need to.
That's good.
Just log out of this, go to our channel, and watch episode 21 first.
Well, you can watch this first.
Well, you can watch it first, but you wouldn't know what the crime is, and it'd be a bit stupid.
It'd be like one of the movies, like The Matrix, where
yeah, like watching
up and stuff.
Like watching Return of the King before you watched. Yeah. Whatever the first one was.
What was the first one?
What was the first one?
Fellowship of the Ring, wasn't it? I don't know. Anyway.
I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
Anywho.
Like prequel, sequel, Star Wars type of
thing. Yeah, Star Wars is all back to front. You've got to watch 4 first. It's weird.
Yeah.
You've got to watch 4, 5, 6, then 1, 2, 3. And then 7, apparently. And I've had to watch them many, many times because
Lisa's a massive Star Wars fan.
Mm-hmm. I've never ever watched it until I met him. Then I was like, really?
And then she goes and puts me off it.
I know, because Padme's a paedophile and just putting it out there because, she meets him when he's about 3 years old and she ends up marrying him. And it's weird. Anyway, DB Cooper. Cut my hands, don't know why I done that. But yeah, the suspects. So, many, many, many suspects. And the first one is this fella that I'm going to put on the screen right now, if I can find the right button. And that's not the right button. That's the right button.
Yeah.
Ted Braden there.
And why was he a suspect, Lisa?
I'll tell you. That's exactly what I'm going to do.
He was sitting in the grass where he might have just parachuted down and he's got muddy trousers.
Yeah, that's his parachute bag behind him. He actually took that picture after he jumped out of a plane. Yeah, right. That's not what happened. Right, so his name is Theodore Burdett. That's a weird middle name, isn't it? Theodore Burdett Braden Jr. And he was born in 1928 and he died in 2007. He was a Special Forces commando during the Vietnam War. And he was a master skydiver and a convicted felon. Which is probably why he's a suspect, to be honest. He does look like he would enjoy a rumble. Yeah. So he was believed by many within the Special Forces community, both at the time of the hijacking and in the years that followed, to have been Dan Cooper. And if you've not watched part 1, his name's Dan Cooper. They made a mistake. Apparently it was a mistake and called him DB Cooper. But that wasn't his name. So he was born in Ohio and he first joined the military when he was 16. Way back in 1944, and he served with the 101st Airborne during World War II. He eventually became one of the leading, yeah.
One of them?
Yeah, I'm on the first page of the stuff up already. Yeah, he was one of them. He became one of the military's leading parachutists, often representing the army in international skydiving tournaments, which I didn't know were a thing until I'd done this. But apparently there's international skydiving tournaments. So there you go, everybody. You've learned something. And his military records list him as having made 911 jumps. During the 1960s...
maybe 912.
Maybe 912. Yeah. But maybe he didn't jump out the plane at all. But we'll find out, won't we?
Yeah.
So, where was I? Jamie just put me off.
Sorry.
Where was? Yeah. Yeah, during the 1960s, that's where I was. He was a team leader in something that was called MACVSOG, MACVSOG, which stands for Military Assistance Command Vietnam Studies and Observation Group, which is a mouthful, so that's why they called it MACVSOG. That was a classified commando unit of Green Berets, which conducted unconventional warfare operations during the Vietnam War. And you can use your imagination and figure out what unconventional warfare is, but I'm sure it wasn't completely above board. Just my opinion, didn't come from me. He also served as a military skydiving instructor. Why can't I speak today? I blame Danielle because she's away having hot balls and ribs. So he was teaching halo jumping techniques to members of Project Delta. He spent 23 months in Vietnam conducting classified operations within both North and South Vietnam, as well as in Laos and Cambodia. In December 1966, however, he deserted his unit in Vietnam and made his way to the Congo to serve as a mercenary, as you do. And he only served there for a short time before he was tracked down and arrested by the CIA and taken back to America for a court-martial. Now, this is actually a capital offence to desert in the army, punishable by the death penalty, which is a bit severe.
I knew that was like an actual crime, severe crime, but I didn't know the death penalty.
Yeah, I don't know if it still is, but at the time when he done it back in 1966, it was punishable by the death penalty because he deserted in the middle of wartime. So he was captured by the CIA, taken back to the United States for a court-martial, and despite the fact that he deserted and he was obviously up for the death penalty, bizarrely, that didn't happen, and instead he was given an honourable discharge. And
so he might have knew things about some kind of.
Well, the only caveat to that was that he was barred from re-enlisting in the military in exchange for his continued secrecy about the MACVSOG program, which obviously wasn't doing completely legitimate things. So, what did he know? Just wonder that. What did he know? So he was profiled in the October 1967 issue of something called Ramparts magazine, which I believe is a military publication, wherein he was described by fellow Special Forces veteran and journalist Don Duncan as being someone with a secret death wish, which I suppose you would need to jump out of a jet. Just my opinion. I mean, it's not something everybody does, is it, Jamie?
Oh, I don't think so.
You got to steal some money? Yeah, let's jump out an aeroplane. So he's got a death wish, apparently, and he continually places himself in unnecessary danger, but always seems to get away with it, according to Don. This was specifically referring to his disregard for military skydiving safety regulations. Duncan also claimed that during Braden's time in Vietnam, he continually was... I can't speak today. He was continuously involved in shady deals to make money.
So, he's fitting the...
Yeah, so following his military discharge in 1967, when he should have been executed, but they gave him an honorary discharge, the details of his life are largely unknown. But at the time of the hijacking, he was a truck driver for something called Consolidated Freightways, which was headquartered in Vancouver, Washington, which is just across the Columbia River from Portland, where the hijacking took place. And it was not far from the suspected drop zone in Ariel, Washington. It's known that at some point in the 1970s, he was investigated by the FBI for stealing £250,000 during a trucking scam that he had devised. Allegedly, because he was never actually charged for that crime either. So what did he know? Why does he keep getting away with all this stuff? What did he know? In 1980, he was indicted by a federal grand jury for driving an 18-wheeler full of stolen goods from Arizona to Massachusetts, but it's unknown there whether there was a conviction for that case, because it's very, very difficult to find anything on this man, despite the fact that his crimes or supposed crimes happened 40 years ago. They're still not making it public. So he eventually ended up being sent to federal prison at some point during the late 1980s, where he served some time in Pennsylvania but the precise crime is unknown. You cannot find a word of it online anywhere. It's impossible to find any concrete information on his crimes or convictions, despite, as I say, that having happened over 40 years ago, and it should be public knowledge, but it's not.
So we call him Teflon Ted.
What
What
did he do, and what did he know that made him get away with all this stuff that he done? So, despite his ability as a soldier, he was not well liked personally, and he was described by a family member as the perfect combination of high intelligence and criminality. From his time working covert operations in Vietnam, he would have likely possessed the then classified knowledge about the ability and the specifications for jumping from a 727, because, as we said, there was like the back stairs could be opened. They were used by the CIA to make military drops in Vietnam. But even the flight crew didn't know that that was something that couldn't be overridden by the cockpit. But he obviously knew that. Not him. Maybe him. Maybe. But whoever Dan Cooper was obviously knew that. He's got a dark complexion from years of outdoor military service.
Oh, he's got the olive complexion.
He's got the olive complexion that they said he had. He's got short dark hair, a medium athletic build, and he was 43 at the time of the hijacking, which are all features that line up the description of Dan Cooper. So was it him? Did they know it was him?
Wow.
And he got away with it?
I must admit, it's quite compelling.
Because he got away with quite a lot of shit, didn't he? Because he had been in the little secret Vietnam program doing dodgy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that is Ted Bryden.
I see him. I've decided.
Oh well, you've not heard the next one yet.
I know. I already.
He's going to say that
well.
for everyone.
Right, go on then.
He's going to be convinced for everyone.
Go on then.
The next one is this fella, and he's called Kenneth Peter Christensen, and that's him there. Does he look guilty by his picture?
He looks like he's got away with something. He's like,
I
know something you don't know. I got away with all that money.
He looks a bit shifty in this picture, but let's find out what his story is. If my slide will move. So, in 2003, Minnesota resident Lyle Christensen watched a television documentary about the Cooper hijacking, and he became convinced that his late brother, Kenneth, who was born in 1926 but had died in 1994, was Dan Cooper. After repeated futile attempts to convince the FBI and author and film director Nora Ephron, whom he had hoped would make a movie about the case, he contacted a private investigator called Skip Porteous, which is a nice name for a private investigator, don't you think? I think so. And he was in New York City. In 2010, Porteous published a book postulating that Christensen was the hijacker. The following year, an episode of the history series Brad Metzer's Decoded also summarized the circumstantial evidence linking Christensen to the Cooper case. Now, Christensen had enlisted in the army in 1944, and he was trained as a paratrooper. World War II had ended by the time that he was actually deployed in 1945, but he made occasional training jumps while stationed in Japan with the occupational forces in the late 1940s. After leaving the army, he joined Northwest Orient, which is an airline that got hijacked. So, yeah, he's got ties to that. In 1954 as a mechanic. So as a mechanic, he would know the operations of the aircraft that they had on their schedule. And then he was a purser based in Seattle. And I did look up last week what a purser was, and I completely forgot.
Yeah. And he's also got...
I did look up.
That's gone.
Anyway. I think Danielle looked up when we were talking.
Danielle, what's a purser? Look up.
Danielle, what was
Homework.
a purser? I forgot. I forgot.
Yeah.
It's gone. So anyway, but that's what he was. He was some sort of...
And he wears a black tie, that.
Yeah, he wears a black clip-on tie, so it must have been him. Yeah, so he was 45 at the time of the hijacking, but he was a little bit shorter at 5'8" and a little bit thinner at 150 pounds and lighter in complexion than eyewitnesses said. However, I would argue that if somebody's sitting in a chair, you can't accurately estimate their height. I mean,
they're all folded up and stuff.
Yeah, they're all folded up.
Chair.
But even if somebody's standing up, I would maybe 5'8", even if they're 6 foot tall. I don't know. I ain't got a clue. Yeah. Anyway, so because he's slightly shorter than the 5'8" to 5'10", although he does fall in at the lower end at 5'8", some people rule him out. But
I don't know.
People,
I'd rule him out. I think.
people haven't got measuring tapes in their eyes. It's just a guess.
No, that'd be silly, wouldn't it?
Unless they actually got a measuring tape out and measured the man as he was
That would
sitting in
be
his
weird.
chair, and they don't know exactly what height he was, in my opinion. So, yeah. Christensen smoked, as did the hijacker, apparently, although that could have been part of his disguise. He might not have been a smoker at all. And he displayed a fondness for bourbon, which is a drink that was ordered. But, I mean, that's not really evidence, is it? Because a lot of people have got a fondness for certain alcoholic drinks, but it doesn't mean that they're going to go and hijack a plane, does it?
No.
Excuse me. I'm just choking myself. So Schaffner told a reporter that photos of that's one of the flight attendants told a reporter that one of the photos of Christensen fit her memory of the hijacker's appearance more closely than those of other suspects that she had been shown over the years, but she could not conclusively identify him. Despite the publicity generated by Porteous's book on Christensen and the 2011 television documentary it made, the FBI stands by its position that Christensen cannot be considered a prime suspect. It cites that a poor match to eyewitness physical descriptions and a complete absence of direct incriminating evidence. But you could say that about all of them. There's no direct incriminating evidence against all of them because they bloody lost it all, didn't they? If you remember for last week, they've lost all the evidence.
I would say the other one so far, I'm more inclined to think the other one, because this one, there's a book involved with this one as well.
Danielle's stepped away from her hot balls to tell you that a purser is the money guy, so he's the money guy. Thank you very much, Miss Alvis.
When there's a book involved, it makes you suspicious, doesn't it? And his brother's dead, so it's like, he won't mind. Well, he can't
that's
mind.
That's a good argument, but there's a book involved for every single one of these. There's so many books. There's so many books, honestly. You could deep dive into this and be reading books for the rest of your life. There's been so many books written about all the different suspects.
Let's say the actual family member. Well, I might be jumping the gun.
He just didn't like his brother. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's bizarre when there's family members coming for, but there is other people that their family members think it's their relative that done it as well. That we'll get to. Yeah. So that is the second one that we're going to go over. Do you think we found them yet, or do you think we're way off the mark? We've got more, but is any of these saying to you, I think it was him? Jamie thinks it's all of them.
Well, actually, my original thought is completely different, but I'll leave that at the end.
We've not done any yet.
Yeah. Anywho.
Right, the next one, it looks a bit dodgy, this one. Let me just get his picture up so you can see what I'm talking about.
I don't think he looked that dodgy.
He does. He looks like a serial killer. Just saying.
I thought he looked like that British comedian.
He looks like a serial killer. He looks like a serial killer.
Right. I thought he looked like a British comedian. I forget his name now.
I don't know which comedian you've been watching, but he looks like a serial killer.
Right. Well,
there's something not right about
that's
him.
because a lot of them serial killers wear like them little weird glasses and
something not quite right about him. But what's his story?
I don't know.
Well, I'm going to tell you because Jamie doesn't want to read today. So I'm very sorry, you're going to have to listen to me waffling on because Jamie's got a sore throat, and I'm going to end up with one now. So Bryant Jack Coffelt, whatever. It says it on the screen. You can pronounce it whichever way you like. He was born in Alan Carr.
It could be Alan Carr.
No, it's a serial killer. So, yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. It might be Alan Carr.
Yeah. Anyway, he was born in 1917 and he died in 1975. He was a con man, an ex-convict, and a purported government informant. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. And he was claimed to have been the chauffeur and confidant of Abraham Lincoln's last undisputed descendant. That was his great-grandson, Robert Todd Lincoln Beckwith. In 1972, he himself began claiming that he was Cooper.
Oh. And
he attempted through an intermediary, that was a former cellmate named James Brown, who I believe sung songs to him. Is that not a singer?
Yeah.
Is that a singer?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So his former cellmate, James Brown, was intermediary to sell his story to a Hollywood production company. Oh, so they're all after movies and books, but So he said that he landed near Mount Hood, about 50 miles southeast of Ariel, injuring himself and losing the ransom money in the process. And if that's true, What a twat. Anyway, photos of Coffelt bear a resemblance to the composite drawings, although he was in his mid-50s in 1971. He was reportedly in Portland on the day of the hijacking, and he sustained leg injuries around that time that were consistent with a skydiving mishap.
How can they say that?
He broke his leg. He basically broke his leg. It could have been consistent with anything.
My nephew broke his leg on a skateboard, so it doesn't mean that he went,
but he did have a leg injury at the time.
Uh-huh.
His account was reviewed by the FBI.
I don't believe him.
Jamie doesn't believe him. So his account was reviewed by the FBI that concluded that it differed in several details from information that had not been made public and was therefore a fabrication. But do we trust the FBI? Because
no.
Cover up.
We don't.
Brown continued peddling his story long after Coffelt died in 1975. That's James Brown, the singer/cellmate. Multiple media venues, including a CBS News program called 60 Minutes, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, have considered his statements and rejected the fact that he was a suspect.
Right.
But
so they're not convinced.
They're not convinced on any of them. You'll find it out. What do you think? Does he look like
we know
one of the many composite sketches that we showed you last week?
Well, we know there's a lot of people who claim to be these people, and they're totally nothing. But I mean, I suppose you could say there is. Well, it's just the glasses, isn't it? I've got glasses.
Why do people confess to things that they've not done?
Attention.
I know, but you could end up in prison for a very, very long time.
I know. Obviously, they don't think it through, but yeah, kind of weird. But people do it.
Right, the next one. This is a picture of him when he was slightly older, but you just have to use your imagination.
I was going to say
you have to use your imagination a little bit because we've not got a picture of him from the time of the hijack.
Right.
And this is William J. Smith.
Yeah. It's not him.
Why is it not him? Because he's older. Has he just been put off straight away?
Mind you, he's got the right kind of hairstyle.
Yeah, he's got the little quiffy hair.
Dark, yeah.
Right, so what's his story? God, I'm reading everything today. In November 2018, the Oregonian, which I believe is a newspaper, published an article proposing William J. Smith, who was born in 1928 and died in 2018, of Bloomfield, New Jersey, was a suspect. The article was based on research conducted by an Army data analyst who sent his findings to the FBI around mid-2018. Smith, who you can see on the screen, if you're watching on the screen, because I think Jamie's putting these into podcasts, so I'm just talking to people that can't see anything. He was enlisted in the United States Navy and he volunteered for combat aircrew training. After his discharge, he worked for the Lehigh Valley Railroad and was affected by the Penn Central Transportation Company's bankruptcy in 1970. And that had been the largest bankruptcy in United States history at the time. The article proposed that the loss of his pension created a grudge against the corporate establishment and the transportation field in general, as well as a sudden need for money because he'd lost his pension. He was 43 years old at the time of the hijacking. He didn't look like, obviously, he's getting into his 60s in this picture. In his high school yearbook, a list of alumni of his at high school killed in World War II lists an Ira Daniel Cooper, which might be where he got the name from for the hijacker. Yeah. So it's like one of his old schoolmates that died in the war. Possibly that's where he got the pseudonym from. The analyst claimed that Smith's naval aviation experience would have given him knowledge of planes and parachutes, and his railroad experience would have helped him find railroad tracks and hop on a train to escape after landing. According to the analyst, aluminum, depending which country you're from, spiral chips found on the clip-on tie could have come from the locomotive maintenance facility. Smith's information about the Seattle area may have come from his close friend, Dan Clare, who was stationed at Fort Lewis during the war. So he had a very good friend at Fort Lewis, which was mentioned by Dan Cooper. Is that? Yeah. The analyst also noted that the man who claimed to be Cooper had identified himself as Dan LeClaire in Max Gunfer's 1985 book. Smith and Clare worked together for Conrail and Newart's Oak Island Yard. Smith retired from that facility as a yardmaster. The article noted that a picture of Smith on the Lehigh Valley Railroad website showed a remarkable resemblance to Cooper FBI sketches. The FBI said that it would be inappropriate to comment on any tips related to Smith.
Inappropriate? So,
I don't know what that even means. That's all they said. It would be inappropriate to comment.
That's like they don't want to find someone.
Or they know who it was and they just are not interested. So that's him. But it's very interesting that he had one of his friends that was killed in the war was called Dan Cooper, and that's the name he used. Dan
Cooper, but then again, Dan Cooper is probably quite a popular name.
Right. So that is that one. And the next one is called Dwayne L Weber. And he's a funny looking sort.
And I've just seen what pictures coming.
And I can prove it to you if I can get the picture ready. As you can see from the picture, he's a criminal, or he's got a criminal background. So there he is. And he's also got a weird shaped head.
Yeah.
So this is Dwayne. And I believe that you say Weber, even though there's only one B in there. It's not Weber, is it?
No.
Weber? Weber. We'll go with Weber.
We'll say Weber.
So this is Dwayne L Weber. Dwayne Weber, who was born in 1924 and died in 1995, was a World War II Army veteran.
Right.
He had served time in at least 6 prisons from 1945 through to 1968 for burglary and forgery. He was proposed as a suspect by his widow, Jo, based primarily on a deathbed confession. 3 days before he died in 1995, Weber told his wife, "I am Dan Cooper." This at the time meant absolutely nothing to her. She didn't know what that meant. That was just he just said to her as he was dying, "I am Dan Cooper." And it wasn't until later that she had said to a friend, and she'd got the connection to the hijacking. So off she goes to the local library, starts researching into it, and she found Max Gunther's book. And she discovered in the actual library book, in her local library, that when she's reading this book, that her husband's handwriting had made notations in this library book, which is weird. So, like the hijacker, Weber drank bourbon, and he was a chain smoker, apparently. Other circumstantial evidence included a 1979 trip to Seattle and the Columbia River, where his wife remembered him throwing a trash bag just upstream of Tina Bar. And it was about 18 months after that trip that the money was discovered.
Interesting.
And the money hadn't been there at the time because of remember they'd looked at the layers and when they dredged it, and the money had been put there sometime after 1974. So his wife remembers him throwing a trash bag in the river. I just got her word for it.
See, I would have thought...
We've only got her word for it.
I would have thought it would make... At first, initially, I thought, no, it's not him. It doesn't look like the description. Then again, I remember last week somebody said about curly or wavy hair. We never know. Plus...
He might have some gel on, Jamie.
If he confessed to his wife and his wife didn't know, I actually think that might give it credibility, because you'd have thought if they knew about it and then mentioned it, that'd be like...
That was like his dying words to her, "Well, I am Dan Cooper." And she was like, "Huh?"
Who's Dan Cooper?
It wasn't until she spoke several months later to a friend, and she's like, "Well, wait a minute." Yeah. So Himmelsbach said that Weber fits the physical description and does have the criminal background. As you remember, Himmelsbach's about the twat.
Yeah.
We're not told you exactly.
So he could be leading you there.
Yeah, we're going to get to that later. This is the FBI agent. That he has a criminal background that he had always felt was associated with the case, but he didn't believe that he was Cooper. So he thinks that he does fit the description and he's got the right background, but he doesn't think it's him. The FBI eliminated him as a suspect in July 1998 when his fingerprints did not match any of those processed from the hijacked plane. But they've not been very good with evidence over the years, so that means nothing. Absolutely not. Maybe if they'd actually kept some of the DNA evidence, like the hair and the cigarettes, they might have found out by now. But they lost it accidentally on purpose, didn't they?
See, straight away, what I'm thinking.
And it says that no other direct evidence could be found to implicate him, and that's because they lost it.
Yeah, I'm looking at this guy now while you're just speaking about him, and I think if you were to describe this guy, it'd be easier than some of these other guys, because the DB Cooper description is more generic.
He's got a bit of a squint to his face. It's like his face is squint.
Yeah.
and he's got big ears. That'd be like the first thing.
Yeah.
He had big ears. He was like the FA Cup. Mm.
Yeah.
If I was just, he had his ears were all like, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think so.
There's many more.
Yeah.
We're not going to go over them all though, because some of them are so, like the links are so ridiculous. It's like, oh, he parachuted once, so it must have been him.
Yeah.
What? Right. The next one has got quite a long name as well, and it is this fella here. William Wolfgang Pratt Gossett. Now, his name is William Pratt Gossett, but he got called Wolfgang. I have no idea why. I couldn't find out why. I mean, maybe he thinks he's German. I don't know. That sounds German to me. Is it German?
I don't know.
Right. So, William Pratt Gossett was born in 1930, and he passed away in 2003. He was a Marine Corps, Army and Army Air Forces veteran who had military service. Well, it is experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
In Korea and Vietnam. His military experience, I read the wrong line there, that's why I got confused. His military experience included jump training and wilderness survival. Gossett was known to be absolutely obsessed with the Cooper hijacking. According to Galen Cook, a lawyer who has collected information related to Gossett for many years, he once showed his sons a key to a Vancouver, British Columbia safe deposit box, which he claimed contained the long-lost ransom money. But it could have been any old key that he had in his man drawer, because all men have got a drawer with like batteries and keys and shit that you're never going to use, a couple of Allen keys. Could have just grabbed anything. We've got keys for things that I didn't know what they ever opened.
And where's the key?
I don't know. But I'm sure everybody's got a key in their house that they didn't even know what it was for originally, but they've kept a key. So the FBI has no direct evidence implicating Gossett and cannot even reliably place him in the Pacific Northwest. Why did I say specific?
Pacific. That's me.
It's him. That's a Jamie thing.
Yeah.
My hand's sort of drifting into their screen now. At the time of the hijacking, there is not one link to the DB Cooper case, said Special Agent Carr, other than statements that he made to someone, which otherwise, in any other case, would be called a confession. But no, whatever. However, several sources do mention that a passenger on the flight by the name of William Mitchell noted a peculiar. I wish I knew what this was. I tried to find it. I can't find anything. But one of the passengers had noted a peculiar physical characteristic that Dan Cooper had. And that's never been made public. But it's said to be something that Gossett also shares. Now, there's nothing. You can't find anything. They've kept us quiet for all these years, so obviously there's a reason for that. But you'd think somebody would have slipped up by now, but they didn't. So if this Gossett fella had the same weird physical characteristic, then that could be interesting. But it would depend entirely what it was. It could have been basically, is it a twitchy eye? Was he like...
Are we talking about physical?
I just said physical characteristic. So it could be a twitchy eye. It could be a dimple on his cheek. Maybe he had a bent finger. God knows. If it was something that's quite common, then it's not going to be that significant. But if it's something that's like really random, it's like 1 in a million people is going to have it, then it could be quite it's him. But there must be a reason that they've kept this physical characteristic this witness has said Dan Cooper had back for the public for all these years. Whether it's because they actually want to catch him and that's something that only
they don't want to release,
they know, or because it's something that would identify the person and they don't want you to know who it is because it's an inside job.
Yeah, it would work that way as well. Yeah.
But it really depends what it is. But it must be something quite significant that they kept it quiet.
Yeah, well, it can't be like something, because looking at this suspect, there's nothing like standing out to me. Like
maybe you've got like one leg shorter than another or something, you know? I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I don't know. If you had polio, you might have a shorter leg. I don't know. Finger missing, something. Maybe he's got 6 fingers. I don't know. But he apparently shares it with the suspect in this case, but we don't know what it is.
Right. Okay.
So it could be something and nothing, or it could be quite significant.
Yeah, that's quite interesting.
And the next one, this might confuse you when I show you the picture. This is the next one. Robert Dayton. And you might notice that there's 2 pictures on the screen. One's a man, and one thinks it's a woman. And that's what I'm saying at the moment. Right. So this is Robert Dayton. Robert Dayton was born in 1926, and he, or she, passed away in 2002. He or she was a recreational pilot, and I'm going to get so hated for misgendering, but I have no idea what to do with these people. A recreational pilot, you didn't know either though, just putting it out there, at the University of Washington, and a librarian. Served in the US Merchant Marines and then the Army during World War II. After discharge, Dayton worked with explosives in the construction field and aspired to have a professional airline career, but he could not obtain a commercial pilot's license. Which is
why he might be upset.
Yeah. So he underwent gender reassignment surgery in 1969.
Disguise himself.
Two years before the hijacking, he became Barbara. So he's not Robert anymore, he's Barbara. However, that's not finished. He claimed to have staged the hijacking 2 years later, and he presented himself as a man as a disguise. Which, let me just... Right, if you are genuinely trapped in the wrong gender and trapped in the wrong body, and you actually make the step to go and have gender reassignment surgery and transition from male to female, you don't keep bloody chopping and changing and I'm going to be a man again to go and jump out of a plane. You don't do that. You don't do that because you don't feel comfortable as that man. And it's been a psychological thing for people that genuinely do this. So, bullshit. Straight away. That's my opinion. You don't do it. Anyway, so he went back, went through the surgery, got all the hormones and shit, become a woman. 2 years later, goes back to being a man to hijack a plane.
Sounds stupid to me.
So, anyway, and the theory there is that he had a grudge against the Federal Aviation Authority and the airline industry, whose insurmountable rules had stopped him from reaching his dream or her dream or whatever dream to become a pilot. He said, because he's claiming himself or herself that it's them, he said at the time that the money was hidden in a cistern in Woodburn, Oregon, a suburban area south of Portland. However, he eventually recanted the entire story after learning that there was no statute of limitations because there had been a prosecution put forward for like the person that identified themselves as Dan Cooper, so it was already on file, so there's no statute of limitations, and he learned that he can go to prison or she can go to prison, so they retracted their statement. And because he didn't at the time match a physical description, whether that was because he had a frock on, probably, I don't know. So Robert or Barbara seemed to have some mental health issues, not just because of changing gender, but because they keep changing back and forward, and they're saying that they committed crimes that they clearly didn't commit to try and get attention. So there's some mental health problems going on there, and it's not him. Yeah. A lot of people believe that it was him, but it's not him, in my opinion. You might think it is, but no. You don't do that. And plus, if you've went through a transition like that, even though it was like quite early on in these sort of surgeries and that, you're going to be getting piled with hormones. If you had done that, you couldn't really get away with disguising yourself as a man without somebody thinking there's a bit dodgy going on. Maybe your voice is a bit, your pitch of your voice has changed with the hormones, and you've grown certain things with the hormones that you shouldn't have.
You would have thought if you did it to try and get away and elude, there's going to be obviously history and evidence that you changed.
I genuinely don't think it's somebody that's genuinely spent their whole life feeling that they are not a man and they're trapped in a man's body, that goes to the extent of getting a surgery to become a woman.
Twice,
would then go and be a man to hijack an aeroplane. They wouldn't do it because they don't feel comfortable with that. It's not. They wouldn't do it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think it was an intention thing.
Yeah, I'm not convinced of that one. That's not that one. I don't think it's that one. No.
So that's a nay for me.
Yeah, I think thumbs down with that one.
But A lot of people think it was. The next one is called Walter R. Rika.
Right.
I think it's Rika.
Or Wrecker.
And that's still him and her. Wait a minute. I'm pressing the wrong buttons. Here he is. Walter R. Rika or Wrecker. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's his name. It's on the screen. You can read. What do you think it says? Right, and that's him. With a lovely sink behind him. Walter R. Rika was born in 1933 and he passed away in 2014. He was a former military paratrooper and intelligence operative. He was proposed as a suspect by his friend Carol Lauren in 2018. In 2008, Rika told Lauren via a recorded phone call that he was a hijacker. Rika gave Lauren permission in a notarized letter to share his story after his death. He also allowed Lauren to tape their phone conversations about the crime over a 6-week period in late 2008. In over 3 hours of recordings, Rika shared details about his version of the hijacking. He also confessed to his niece, Lisa's story. From Rika's description of the terrain on his way to the drop zone, Lauren concluded that he landed near Cle Elum, Washington. After Rika described an encounter with a dump truck driver at a roadside cafe after he landed, Lauren actually located a man called Jeff Oziedekaz. I don't know how to pronounce it. It looks a bit Polish. A Polish man called Jeff, who was driving his dump truck near Cle Elum that very night. And he actually met a stranger at the Timaway Junction Cafe just outside of town. The man had asked him to give directions to the cafe, and he presumably to be picked up, and he spoke to a friend on the phone, and so that corroborated what he said, that he'd met the truck driver because he found a truck driver. But he might have just been in the area.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that he hijacked a plane.
No.
So that happened, and I've lost my place. Oh, whatever, I've lost my place. I'll just continue waffling on anyway. So these claims, however, have aroused a lot of scepticism. Cle Elum is well north and east, so to the northeast of the known flight path, and it's more than 150 miles north of the drop zone assumed by most analysts. And it's even further from Tenebar, where the ransom money was found in the 80s. He was a military paratrooper and a private skydiver with hundreds of jumps to his credit, which this is argued that it's in contradiction to the FBI's profile that he was an amateur skydiver at best. But that's changed so many times over the years. He's been a professional. He knew what he was doing. Oh, he's never done it.
We saw that.
They've been all over the place. They have no idea. So maybe
they maybe do have an idea.
Well, maybe it contradicts that particular version where they're saying, oh, well, you know what? He's not got any skydiving experience, but they've said so many different things over the years that it depends which version that you're going with. So, I mean, he confessed he didn't want it said until after he passed away. He allowed him to tape. They found a witness that saw him there. Was it him?
Yeah. And there was a book written about him saying that he's...
And just like many, many other suspects, the FBI said it would be inappropriate to comment on specific tips provided to them, and that no evidence to date had provided any culpability of any suspect beyond a reasonable doubt.
This is the trouble. This is why it gets so mixed up and convoluted. This one looks a bit... Right, the next one. That's the next one.
Jamie's just seen the picture and he's decided it's the next one.
No, I don't think it is. I don't know. I thought it was, actually, and I'll explain why after.
I think this is the one that Danielle was rooting for.
Rooting for?
Like, yeah, it's him. I'm going to put a bet on him. Not that it's probably ever going to be sold in any official capacity, unfortunately. So the next one is called Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. And there he is. Is that DB Cooper? Sorry, Dan. Well, let's find out what his story is. Richard McCoy was born in 1942 and he died in 1974. He was an Army veteran who served 2 tours of duty in Vietnam. First as a demolition expert and later with the Green Berets as a helicopter pilot. After his military service, he became a warrant officer in the Utah National Guard and an avid recreational skydiver with aspirations of becoming a Utah State Trooper. On April the 7th, 1972, McCoy staged the best-known so-called copycat hijacking. So he's one of the D.B. Cooper copycats, apparently. He boarded United Airlines Flight 855, which was a Boeing 727 with the aft stairs in Denver, Colorado, and brandishing what later proved to be a paperweight resembling a hand grenade and an unloaded handgun, he demanded four parachutes, and $500,000. After delivery of the money and the parachutes at San Francisco International Airport, he ordered the aircraft back into the sky and bailed out over Provo, Utah, leaving behind his handwritten hijacking instructions and his fingerprints on a magazine that he'd been reading. He was arrested on April the 9th, which is my birthday. But I hadn't been born, so it doesn't matter. And he had the ransom cash in his possession, so he managed to keep hold of it while he jumped, by the way.
Yeah.
After trial and conviction, he received a 45-year sentence. And you might think that's the end of the story. But nay, it's not the end of the story, so wait.
No, yeah. But...
2 years later, wait a minute.
Yeah.
2 years later, he escaped from Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary with several other accomplices by crashing a garbage truck through the main gate. Sounds a bit easy to me, but whatever. He was tracked down 3 months later in Virginia Beach, and he was killed in a shootout during that capture, and he was shot by FBI agents.
Was he killed deliberately to get rid of the D.B. Cooper?
Well, in the 1991 book, D.B. Cooper, The Real McCoy, do you see what they did there? The Real McCoy, because that's his name. Parole officer Bernie Rhodes and former FBI agent Russell Kalami asserted that they had identified McCoy as Cooper. They cited obvious similarities in the two hijackings, claims by McCoy's family that the tie and mother-of-pearl tie clip left on the plane belonged to McCoy, and McCoy's own refusal to admit or deny that he was Cooper. A proponent of their claim was that the FBI agent who actually shot McCoy had said, "When I shot Richard McCoy, I shot D.B. Cooper at the same
I see what
time."
you did there. Oh, I like that.
So, although there is no reasonable doubt that McCoy committed the Denver hijacking, the FBI, however, does not consider him to be a suspect in the Cooper case because of mismatches in age and description, a level of skydiving skill that is well above what they now believe him to the hijacker to have had, but they've changed their mind again on that so often. McCoy's wife, Karen, at the time, gave him an alibi that he was in Utah at home that Thanksgiving. However, it's not true. His wife's sister, Denise, has since stated that they were gone for 4 days during that Thanksgiving and that she had actually been brought in to babysit the two children. Apparently, Floyd and his wife Karen were, according to what they'd been told, were in Vegas. His two grown children are called Chanty and Richard, and they have since come forward following their mother's death and claimed that their father was indeed Dan Cooper and that their mother was an accomplice to the crime.
Yeah, and that was convincing because I saw that. I saw somebody else's YouTube channel, and he's been doing it off and on for 20 years, and he's convinced. He convinced me until we saw other people. So I don't know. What I do notice, though, is all these expert skydivers seem to have one thing in common.
Apparently,
these big stick-out
video
ears.
clip.
Yeah, I've got a couple of clips in there, but I don't think it's that one.
Which apparently she sent you one in Signal.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can get it up on here because my tablet is died, isn't it?
Right.
I'll see if I can get it.
He's quite a convincing suspect, but then so's the one that was in the secret project that should have been killed, but he got an honourable discharge. It's so confusing. But there's more. There's more, everybody. We're not done. The next one is I can only find this picture, which has got 3 other random people in it. Don't know who they are, but he is the second from the left in this picture, and he's called Joe Lakic. Lakic. That'll do.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I can't access the clip at the moment because my signal's on the tablet.
We've got some in the thing anyway. Maybe the same one.
Yeah, it might be.
So Joe Lakic, who was born in 1921 and passed away in 2017, was a retired US Army major and Korean War veteran, whose daughter, Suzanne Geth.
Yeah.
And this is, I'm going to go off on a tangent here because you need to know the backstory. So I think this is quite a good one. Right. Just my opinion. So that's Joe, second from the left. His daughter, Susan, so I said Suzanne, it's Susan Geth, had been killed less than 2 months before the DB Cooper hijacking, and she'd been killed as a consequence of a botched hostage negotiation conducted by the FBI. And I'm going to tell you in a minute about that case because it's very important as to why people believe it was him. All right? So he'd become a Cooper suspect in large due to the revelation that his tie had contained microscopic particles of uncommon metals such as unalloyed titanium. It's speculated that few people during that particular era would have had contact with such materials, and that Cooper may have worked in a manufacturing environment, working on electronics as an engineer or a manager. When the hijacking had occurred, Luckich was working in Nashville as a production supervisor at an electronics capacitor factory and would likely have been exposed to the materials that were found on the tie. So that's what's tying him in. But it's
tying him in.
It's tying him in, yeah. That's not all. So when he was asked by Tina Mucklow, the actual Dan Cooper, why he was committing the hijacking, the guy that was calling himself Dan Cooper, if you remember for last week, had replied, "It's not because I have a grudge against your airlines, it's just because I have a grudge." And it's believed that his grudge was his anger towards the FBI for their failed efforts in rescuing his daughter less than 2 months before this happened. And that this whole thing was nothing to do with money. He didn't even want the money. He just wanted to embarrass the FBI. So this is his story. So I've got some pictures for you. And the first one. So this is Susan Lakic Geth. This is a crime scene photo. She was shot by her estranged husband after he dragged her aboard a private plane in Nashville and hijacked it to Jacksonville. The FBI were found negligent about this, and the whole story is as follows. Right. Posing as a... Oh, we're really small on the side. What? I thought I'd pressed the other button. Posing as a doctor with his patient in October of 1971, George Geth Jr. dragged his screaming wife, Susan, who was Lakic's daughter, aboard a private plane in Nashville. She's screaming at the time, "I'm being kidnapped. Help." Right. George Geth says that he's taken her to Atlanta for treatment, but the pilots, who are Randall J. Crump and Brent Downs, are not convinced. They're a bit sceptical because this woman's screaming, "I'm being kidnapped. Help me." She's quite hysterical. And they ask, "Show us your credentials then. You're a doctor. Show us your credentials." At which point, George Geth pulls out a 9mm gun and points at him and says, "This is my credentials." Ooh. He then orders everyone on the plane, including his friend Bobby Wayne. Give a minute.
Yeah.
He orders them all on the plane, and that includes his friend Bobby Wayne Wallace, who's with him and his wife, who is kidnapping basically at the time, estranged wife. He was accompanying them, and he later claimed that he thought he was giving them a ride to the airport and that he was not involved. But I'm not convinced, because I'm sure she didn't just start screaming, "I'm being kidnapped, help me," when they arrived at the plane. So he knew what was going on if he'd driven there, in my opinion. Anyway, inside the plane, Wallace sits behind the pilot. Geth and Susan sit on a bench seat in the rear of the cabin. Geth asks for a flask from the plane's minibar, then informs all aboard that the grey metal box on his lap contains plastic explosives. So there's a BOMB. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He also claims to be working for the CIA. Ooh. But he also claimed he was a doctor 5 minutes before. So
yeah, what is it?
Who knows? If the pilots interfere with his mission, he says, he'll kill them. And he's obviously carrying something that he claims to be a BOMB. The pilots are ordered to take off as Susan screams and sobs the entire time. the airline taxis towards the runway. Downs asks Geth where he'd like to go. Cuba, he says. Pilot's like, no, you're joking. We can't go to Cuba. Not in this aircraft. It's not going to reach. There's not enough fuel, whatever. So he's like, well, what about Jamaica? And he's like, really? No. So he tells him, look, we can probably make it to Freeport in the Bahamas if you really want to go somewhere. But to get there, we'll have to refuel in Jacksonville, Florida. Geth then asks the pilot if the control tower knows what's going on, and Downs says, yes, someone will be waiting for them in Jacksonville. That someone, by the way, is the FBI. Unfortunately, considering what's going to happen. And what's about to transpire on that day, the 4th of October 1971, is still, to this day, discussed in classrooms nearly 40 years later as an example of what not to do in a hostage situation, because they stuffed it up so badly. They were so negligent and stupid. So the plane lands, obviously, to refuel. The pilot has retracted the flaps, which in the event of a hijack, this is actually a common thing that they do. It's a signal that the pilot is given to law enforcement to leave the plane alone. The FBI protocol in these circumstances is that the pilot makes that call. So the fact that he has retracted the flaps means leave that plane alone, because obviously there's a bloke on board. He's got an explosive device. He's got weapons. He's got hostages. So the pilot asks when he gets there, where's the fuel truck? And the FBI responds, there will be no fuel.
Oh, yeah.
Stating that this is a waiting game. So like, there'll be no fuel. This is a waiting game. Really? They broadcast the following. This is the FBI. There will be no fuel. Repeat. There will be no fuel. There will be no starter. Have you cut your engines? And there's no response. Obviously, there's commotion on board at this stage. Geth has overheard the FBI agent, and he reminds Downs that he will kill everyone on board. And he orders him to take off. Downs tells him that that's impossible. They've not got enough fuel to take off. There's not enough fuel to go anywhere. So Downs then talks back to what is now the FBI, and he says, look, I don't think this fella's kidding. I wish you'd get that fuel truck out here. And the FBI responds, 58 November, that's the call sign for the plane, there will be no fuel. I repeat, there will be no fuel.
Wow.
Yeah. At that point, the pilot responds, this is 58 November. You are endangering lives by doing this, and we have no other choice but to go along, and for the sake of some lives, we request some fuel out here, please. They're so bloody stupid what they do. Well, he's obviously got a gun to his head. I mean, you're like,
yeah,
right. Burns relays this to O'Connor, that's the FBI agent's name. The tower operator, Bernard Sloan, will later say that he hears doubt in Burns' voice. I think he may have said it to me. Maybe we ought to let this guy go. But they didn't. But Agent O'Connor has taken a completely hard line. He will not negotiate. They ask over the radio if the passengers can hear the exchange, obviously meaning the hijacker as well, and they're told yes. And Agent Burns then stated over the radio, the decision will be no fuel for that aircraft. No starter. Run it out any way you want it. Passengers, if you are listening, the only alternative in this aircraft is to depart the aircraft. Downs does not respond. Geth has decided to allow the co-pilot, Crump, to deplane and go and negotiate with the agents for fuel. Because he's not leaving the plane. He's in control here. He's got something that he's saying is an explosive device. He's got hostages. Yeah. He's in control here. So he allows the co-pilot to get off the plane. So the co-pilot gets off the plane, goes down. They're obviously, no. You're not getting fuel. They'll have to come off. This FBI agent is a complete and utter wanker. Just going to say it out loud. So he's off. And he refuses. This co-pilot's like, I am not getting back on that plane. You let me off. I'm not going back.
Yeah.
Which,
but you see, they didn't give us a lesson to learn for them to learn about the fuel where he messed them about. They messed them about with the fuel other than the DB plane. Yeah. So
obviously this Crump bloke, he's got away. He's now no longer on this little tiny tin box with a madman with a gun and saying that he's got a bomb. So he's like, I am not going back on that plane. So the co-pilots and they get on the radio again and say, the co-pilot is in the car and will not return to the aircraft. Just infuriating the bloke on board even more. There is no reply, so he tries again by just saying 58 November. The FBI will not receive another transmission from aboard that plane. Inside the plane, Wallace, who's Geth's friend, who claims that he was just giving his friends a lift to the airport. And by the way, during this entire exchange, Wallace, who's not involved in the crimes, got a gun in his waistband. He then asks Geth if he can go out and negotiate for fuel. So Geth eventually agrees. So Wallace exits the plane with the gun in his waistband still, and he's immediately arrested for air piracy. So he's not getting back on the plane either. It gets worse though. At this point, this twat of an agent, Agent O'Connor, orders the guard, the FBI agent that's guarding Wallace, to shoot out the plane's right rear tire.
Oh my God. These have been watching too many movies.
Yeah. So he's like, shoot out that plane's rear tire. So the agent puts 2 rounds into the tire with his service revolver. But obviously, this small caliber pistol can't penetrate the heavy rubber. So it's just, they've started shooting for no reason. It didn't do anything to the tire, but they've started firing.
Yeah, they got gunfire.
They've started firing at the plane. So the FBI then pull up in front of the plane with their guns drawn, oh hi-ho, and they demand that the suspect leaves the plane with his hands up. At this point, gunshots ring out inside the plane, the windshield shatters and bullets fly past the agents' heads, and then more shots are heard inside. The FBI observe the pilot inside, slumping against the console, and he disappears from view. He's just been killed. 3 more shots ring out. It's now 5:38 a.m. and it's been less than 20 minutes since that plane landed, and the pilot is dead. Susan has also been killed by her husband, and then he shot himself. However, he's still alive, but he's later pronounced dead on the way to the hospital. The pilot's wife, coincidentally, after this, and Susan's parents, who obviously showed you his picture, and he's one of the suspects in the D.B. Cooper case, end up suing the FBI for negligence following the murders of their family members, because they were completely bloody negligent. They did not handle this at all well. They knew the protocol. They knew that them flaps meant that the pilot's like, leave this plane alone. And he's like, shoot the tires out. And like,
that's ridiculous, isn't it?
He's done everything he can to aggravate somebody that's armed and got hostages, and they've ended up dead. So initially, the judge, who was sitting without a jury, found that Agent O'Connor had not been negligent. I'm like, what? However, they appealed that, and the US Court of Appeals reversed that decision. Thank God that somebody has got bloody sense, saying that he'd acted rashly by ordering agents to disable the plane and failing to exercise caution when innocent human lives were at stake. You think? The court finally awarded Jamie Downs, who was the pilot's wife, nearly $270,000, and the Lakics received $57,000 as now guardians to Susan's daughter. But the question remains, was a grief-stricken father out for revenge, pulling off a similar hijacking with an explosive device to humiliate the FBI and punish the FBI for the death of his daughter? Was it never about money at all, but about a father's grief? It's very possible, in my opinion, considering that he's one of the few people that had worked with those metals, and it was just 8 weeks before. 8 weeks before. Yeah. And a lot of people assume that when you do something like this and put a ransom up, that it's the government and the FBI that's going to pay it. It actually was the airline that put the money forward, but they assume that the FBI is paying the ransom.
Now, I was convinced of the last one, Troy McCloy. What's his name, Troy McCloy?
Isn't that
says, hi, I'm Troy McCloy.
Yeah, that's a Simpsons character.
Anyway.
It wasn't him either.
But the thing is, right, they didn't learn from their mistakes, and it is quite convincing, actually. Now, see? Every time you think, I've got this in my head.
I think there's quite a few of them. I think this is a possibility, though.
Yeah.
The grief for his daughter, thinking that the FBI's incompetence. Well, It's not thinking. He knows that the FBI's incompetence caused the death of his daughter.
I must admit, he get bonus points for his liners. Here's my credentials.
Here's my. That's
really
like something out of a movie, isn't it?
yeah.
Shoot me a cadet. Here's
So
my
was the shooting
credentials.
of the tires of the plane. That was out of the movie. They should make a movie of that one anyway. But
So,
yeah.
And I don't know if you can hear that it's pissing down a rain now here. Can you hear that? Right. Now you might have heard of the next person, although that one was quite. I'm not. Oh, there's quite a few. I don't know what to think. You might have heard of this one.
Yeah. Right.
And that is John Emil List. Now, John List. You heard of him?
I've heard of John Emil List. Yes, I think we watched the movie actually once. But
Do you think
I'm
it
telling
looks
you,
like D.B. Cooper?
I'm telling you, possibly, but there's no way I'd ever associate because of the sort of things that he did, which were really sort of like shitty. But that's far field from DB Cooper crime.
Yeah, but listen now. Listen to this story.
Yeah.
Right, on November 9th, 1971, this bloke here, John Emil List, murdered his wife, his mother, and his 3 children in Westfield, New Jersey, and then he vanished off the face of the earth. He was so meticulously planning this murder of his entire family that a whole month had passed before anyone even realised that anything was wrong and their bodies were discovered. By this stage, John List was long gone. List assumed a new identity, and he even remarried and evaded justice for 18 years, and he was not caught until 1989, after the case of his family's murder was shown on America's Most Wanted. Now, 15 days after he killed his family, before the bodies had even been discovered, a man got on a flight and said his name was Dan Cooper. 15 days later. Yeah. And that's why it's strongly believed that him, after killing his family on the run, hijacked a plane. Either he was suicidal because he just killed his entire family, or he was after money to start a new life. Obviously, when he was captured in 1989, he was asked by somebody if he had anything to do with this, and he denied it. Although he admitted killing his family, but he denied this. But I don't know. There
is a resemblance.
15 days. 15 days later. Very close. There's a resemblance. It's very close.
Here's my argument. The hijacking is probably... There's a lot of planning put in the hijacking.
You would need some money behind you to go and create a new identity and evade justice for 18 years. You would need some money.
But if he's trying to escape, you do that quicker than the hijacking. The hijacking is more planning with all this. I need this, I need that, I need to do this. When you're trying to get away, you'll just go, okay, I'm going to try and get...
Right,
I don't know.
We found the real DB Cooper. It's Kelly. It's Kelly.
She did say, yeah.
Right, so is it John List? I don't know. John List is an evil son of a bitch, and what he done to his own children and his wife and even his own mother.
Well, there's a lot involved with that, actually, isn't there?
There's a lot more involved. I mean, there's a whole backstory.
Lots of lies,
there's a whole backstory and lies and deceit, and probably something we might cover at some stage. But we've got a whole big list. But did he hijack a plane? Did he have the capability to? I don't even know if he had any experience. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's just the timing. 15 days, and there's a slight resemblance between him and what they claim, even though those 3 composite B, C, D, whatever, are exactly the same person. But apparently one doesn't look nothing like the hijacker and this one's fine.
Right.
I don't know. No. I think there's better suspects.
I think that's a bit of a stretch. It's just, I know, I can see it.
I think there is better suspects. Coincidentally, John List died in prison in 2008 and he's currently burning in hell.
Probably.
Just, there's no probably about it. And there's more. Robert Rackstraw is next. And that's him. Over there. As you can see, mugshot, criminal, everybody. So this is Robert Rackstraw.
I don't know. He looks like he could be someone who drinks Stella and smokes pot. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Right. Robert Wesley Rackstraw was born in 1943 and he died in 2019. He was a retired pilot and an ex-convict who served on an army helicopter crew and other units during the Vietnam War. He came to attention of the Cooper Task Force in February 1978 after he was arrested in Iran and deported to the US to face explosives possession and kiting. Is that forging? Kiting charges.
Kiting is normally moving stuff about, isn't it? So it might be just
So he was kiting checks. He was getting all these checks and making them into a
put
kite.
on a piece of string.
Putting on a piece of string and flying it.
Yeah.
In Iran, apparently.
Okay.
So several months later, while he was released on bail, he attempted to fake his own death by radioing a false Mayday call and telling controllers that he was bailing out of a rented plane over Monterey Bay. Police later arrested him in Fullerton, California, on an additional charge of forging federal pilot certificates. The plane he claimed to have ditched was found repainted in a nearby hangar. Cooper investigators noted his physical resemblance to Cooper composite sketches, even though he, at the time of the hijacking, was only 28. But he might have had a rough life and looked a bit older.
Yeah.
So he's only 28. They're saying it was somebody in their late 30s, early 40s. So he did have military parachute training. He did have a criminal record, but
explosives and mentioned.
Yeah, and he was eliminated as a suspect in 1979 after no direct evidence of his involvement could be found because the FBI lost all the evidence. So one of the Flight 305 attendants reportedly did not find any similarities between photos of Rackstraw from the 1970s and her recollection of Cooper's appearance. However, FBI files that were released in 2019 seem to reveal that the FBI knew that it was Rackstraw and that he was a CIA operative before, during, and after the hijacking. So it was all covered up. And that brings me to, let me just get rid of that a minute because I've got to switch over. Dun, dun, dun. I'm switching. Jamie, talk in the meantime. It's taking longer than it should.
She's switching. Yeah, I do. Oh my God. When you think you haven't got it.
Right, this is the Daily Mail. There's plenty of these, but I picked this one because it's more compressed in the headline. So this is the Daily Mail, and the date on this is the 17th of September, 2019. New files prove that the FBI covered up the identity of D.B. Cooper. Documents from James Comey's administration show Army pilot Robert Rackstraw was the prime suspect in the hijacking, and he told agents he could pull it off and he had the skill to. Investigator Thomas J. Colbert identified Robert Rackstraw, 75, a military vet with a murky past riddled by fraud and con artistry, as D.B. Cooper last year. Now Colbert claims the FBI knew Rackstraw was D.B. Cooper, but were involved in a scheme to conceal, suppress, and fabricate evidence in the cold case. Rackstraw died in July of natural causes, potentially taking with him the answers of what really happened that fateful winter's afternoon. FBI released secret dossiers following his death, which revealed they believed Rackstraw to be fully capable of carrying out the daring hijacking. Obviously, you know, he took $2,000, 1971, blah, blah, blah. Colbert says that senior executives in James Comey's administration discreetly shipped off the Cooper file to a locked archive when an independent team found the smoking gun evidence. So they're covering it up. And James Comey is behind the orchestration. They're covering it up to this day. He claims that Comey's executives declined to see DNA evidence in the case and also had at least 3 media stories pulled from the air. And they've got a lot of evidence to back this up. So there's a lot that they've looked into. And they've got these FBI files that they actually thought was him, and then they've covered it up. And there's still files that they're trying to get hold of that the FBI has locked up tight, and they're not letting anybody see, even though there's been FOIAs, because he was a CIA agent at the time.
This is where I was drifting to. So I'll speak at the end about that.
That is the end.
Well,
that was the last one. So we've got many suspects with many different motives.
I've changed my opinion
so many times.
Even before in the past, I thought it was a conspiracy. I actually thought these 3-letter agencies were creating something to make money somehow, or to do pull something out of the woodwork, something like that. But now I'm actually thinking that is a cover-up. Whether it was a botch and that was a Floyd McCoy and he did it.
Floyd McCoy.
You know, and that weren't copycat. That was actually him getting it right the next time, because that's what the thought process is. But this guy now seems quite viable.
And there's a father, and then there's the one
father.
that was in the secret thing in Vietnam that should have been put to death. For
There is some motive.
There's just so many. Oh my God. Maybe it was just all of them.
But this one now is coming into the sort of cover up. What I'll change from conspiracy to cover up, and that does fit that.
Oh my God, it's so. I do apologise if you hear that, but it is absolutely pissing it down with rain outside.
Interesting.
Really loud.
Interesting. No,
So
that's all actually fascinating.
I don't know what to think. There's a couple like. I don't think it was like Emo List. I don't think it was John List. He's a wanker, but he didn't do this.
He's a wanker.
It wasn't Barbara, whatever his or her name was. They're just a bit crazy.
Yeah.
But then you got like the one that was in the secret military program that knew about the stairs, and he got away with so many other crimes over the years because he knew something. What did he know? And you got the father looking for vengeance. You got this one that the evidence is coming out even like a couple of years ago, and they're still trying to get hold of it.
The copycat.
And Comey covering it up. And you got the one that was apparent copycat that done a. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's something weird going on underneath all this, though. I think somebody in one of these high up agencies knows exactly what happened, and we're never going to know.
Like they normally have a full guy, and that is true. But then are they covering? Are they?
Let's just talk about the FBI for a minute, though.
Well, yeah.
Because that guy, the guy that was put in charge of this case, is a
moron.
Yeah. So did the FBI cover this up for some reason?
Yeah. And he lied, didn't he? We saw that.
There's just so much inconsistencies and bullshit through the years. They've been wholly inconsistent over the years, and the lead investigator, Ralph Himmelstwat, has been all over the place, absolutely all over the place, and he frankly comes across as an incompetent moron.
Yeah.
Evidence was conveniently lost, and evidence that contained DNA that could have answered this question once and for all was destroyed. They don't know where to put it. The composites were all over the place. It took far too long to actually get something that matched the witness descriptions, as it did in the Madeleine McCann case as well, which is something I really want to dive into. Far too long. And then they were just all over the place. The first one looked nothing like the final one, but the last three were the same person.
Yeah.
But apparently it took them months to edit that into the same picture. It's just weird.
But the original picture, people keep saying, oh, yeah, these matches the original picture. But then the original picture, like you're saying, is flawed anyway. So that means nothing.
The bloke that Jamie was talking about that done the like 20 years of investigation is a bloke called Dan Grider, I believe his surname is. Yeah. And he actually interviewed Himmelstwat a couple of years ago now. And I was watching this, and there's a couple of things that he just slips out, probably without even realising, because frankly, he's a moron.
Yeah.
I'm going to play this little video, and I'm just going to tell you like what the relevance of what he said in this tiny little clip of this whole interview. There's a lot of relevance in the answer to this question. So let me just grab it up. And it's this one, isn't it?
Yes, except that I cannot say with accuracy that the parachute did not open. Right. Because one of the parachutes he was given has never been located.
Right.
See?
Right.
Actually, two of them have never been located. But one of them was the one that had been disabled deliberately, and the other one was actually the best parachute he was given, which was a quick release harness, and with a larger canopy and steerable.
And it stayed with you.
Yeah.
So there, and that one answer, he gave away a couple of things. Now, he tells you that what you've been told for years was an accident. Accidentally
yeah.
gave them a training parachute. He's telling you that one of the parachutes was disabled
Deliberately.
So that was done on purpose, and he just admitted to that. But also, something that they've claimed consistently throughout the years was that these were like
simple
civilian parachutes that were very simple, and there was no way to steer them. And he's just said there that it was the best parachute that he was given, and it was steerable.
And so happened to be the two what could have been missing.
If that was steerable, that puts a completely different, like where he jumped and where he landed, because he's able to steer it. He's not just going to follow like a wind path or whatever. It's steerable. Obviously, that makes the area completely different, even though they got it completely wrong in the first place. But he's admitted there in that one answer that A, they deliberately disabled one of those parachutes, and B, it was the one that they had. He had a really good parachute there, and it was steerable. And that's the one that he took. That is the one that he took. Yeah. So that shows that he's got the knowledge as well, that he's took the better one.
Well, also,
if he had 4 and he's took the best one, he knows that that's the best one.
Also, he stripped apart one. Maybe he knew that one was flawed, and he stripped that one deliberately. I could use it. So he basically made a bag and a getaway, and he could have used a getaway parachute that steered. So that would be ideal.
And then, one more clip for you, and this is just like, as soon as I was like, what?
Really suspicious,
Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's like doing this has made me really suspicious of everybody. But the way that these people answer these questions and the way that they react and the answers that they give to the reporters and the direct aftermath. This is direct aftermath. And this is the flight crew getting interviewed by the media.
Very strange.
For the news, directly after this has just happened. And the way that they answer the questions, the way they're speaking, their mannerisms, just the way they're looking, like side eyes to each other. It's weird. And it's as if they're...
They at least know something. They know, just flat, and you make up your own
mind. Your own mind, but I'm just probably suspicious. I don't know.
No, I think that's right.
Here they are. This is from 1971, and this is them directly after the hijacking.
When he got on a plane in Portland, Oregon last night, he was just another passenger who gave his name as D.A. Cooper. But today, after hijacking a Northwest Airlines jet, ransoming the passengers in Seattle, then making a getaway by parachute somewhere between there and Reno, Nevada, the description on one wire service, master criminal. Bill Curtis reports.
36 passengers got off the jetliner in Seattle last night, left aboard 4 crew members and the hijacker, dressed in a business suit demanding $200,000 and carrying a plain briefcase which he told the crew held explosives. With the full ransom collected from Seattle banks and 4 parachutes aboard, the plane headed for Reno. It took 3.5 hours, slow for a jet, but the hijacker had given detailed flight instructions. The rear stairwell was open all the way. It arrived at Reno in shreds. The crew, here being debriefed by the FBI, was told to fly low over Oregon's flatlands with the flaps down. The speed dropped to 200 miles per hour. Somewhere, the hijacker parachuted away with the money. The crew had little to say.
We gave the information to the authorities, and we just don't want to discuss it any further.
Have you been told by the FBI not to discuss?
No, they handle their investigation, and my company would rather have it released through them.
Tina, were you with the rest of the crew during the flight after you left the ground the last time?
Yes, I went up to the cockpit.
None of you were within sight of the hijacker, right?
Right. We already talked about it, and the captain,
how did you surmise that he was not on the plane when he landed in Reno?
Well, a search was made of the plane immediately after landing.
As we understood it, he could have gotten off as the plane taxied before it came up here. How did the crew know he wasn't on when it touched ground?
No way. The crew couldn't know that, but we had the airport covered.
Are the authorities now searching for the...
Snow covers the mountains in northern California and Nevada, a hostile terrain for any parachute drop, especially at night. Police believe he left the 727 in the flatlands of Oregon or Washington, but they are still looking in 4 states, even around the airport. Authorities began their search here, thinking the hijacker may have jumped off at the end of the runway as the plane touched down. But the problem is more complex. A daring parachute escape from a flying 727 somewhere between Reno and Seattle, Washington. Bill Curtis, CBS News.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. They're acting weird. I'm sorry, they're acting
I know
weird.
they're tired and exhausted, but
They had just been, the flight crew had just been spoken to by the FBI, and now they're acting weird. And that FBI agent's like, "Well, no. They were actually looking. They were looking. This is directly as soon as it happened, and they're telling you that they're searching around the airport because they actually believed at the time that he didn't jump out of the plane and that he'd got off the airplane at some point while he was taxiing. Had landed, and before it come to a standstill, he'd got off. Maybe disguised himself as an airport worker. They were looking in that area.
yeah. Weird.
So where did they come to the? They have no idea because they didn't go anywhere near that plane when it landed. They stayed well back, obviously because of what was going on, and obviously they'd had that situation just as we know whether that bloke was involved or not, just 2 months earlier, where they got too close, the FBI, and it resulted in people getting killed. So they were staying back. The crew didn't land the plane immediately and come out of the cockpit into the main cabin to search and see if he was there. So they don't know. They don't know. They waited. You're not going to storm into knowing that there's a bloke that's armed. They knew he at least had a knife as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's very possible he didn't jump out of that plane at all, and that he got out somewhere as it came
That
in.
would be easy.
As it came in
maybe.
to the airport.
Well, when everyone else is coming off,
there's always that little brown paper bag that they didn't. He never used anything in that brown paper bag during his crime on the airplane until she left, and he was in that part all on his own. The conclusion that they made that he was sucked out falls apart by the fact that they had asked him if he needed any help back there, and he replied one word, no. It still means that
means he's there.
It means that even after he had opened the stairs, he didn't get sucked out because he was there to say no.
Uh-huh.
So how long was he there? He could have, even if he did jump out, he could have jumped out at any stage. Why did they narrow it down to when there was that jolt? Because they found a big metal plaque that had fell off the airplane many years later, which we told you about, like the safety plaque thing. Was anything else flung off that plane to cause the jolt?
Yeah.
Like a trolley or something that they just didn't notice. Somebody's luggage had been left on in the commotion.
Here's my idea. I've just thought of this. They heard that commotion. Perhaps when people think, oh yeah, we wouldn't be able to keep hold of the money, perhaps he deliberately threw out the money where he's going to collect it later, or somebody else was there to collect it somewhere where he knew it was going to land within reason.
Yeah, throw the money
Maybe
out.
have a
Throw the
marker
money
on
out.
it. Maybe have a marker on it, and then he jumps out later, or gets off, or put a boiler suit out of the brown paper bag, get dressed up and walk out like an engineer. No one knows because everyone else is concentrating and getting off. And
what a little coat that says FBI on the back and just walks past them all.
Yeah, anything like that. Yeah, or an engineer or something.
I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
There is and I don't think we'll ever know, because I think that this. I do think that this is very suspicious, and the FBI is supposed to be one of the leading investigative agencies in the world, and yet the evidence in this case was all lost at individual places.
Yeah,
it wasn't like there was one place where evidence for loads of cases went missing, or there was a fire or something. This one was at this place in this state, and this one was over here in this state, and they lost them.
And that was conveniently lost as they needed it. I was like, yeah, we'll go do an analysis on this. Oh, what a shame they're gone.
Yeah.
And a few years later, we'll do this. Oh no, that's gone too.
It's just very suspicious. Very suspicious.
There's a cover up, definitely.
And I mean, it could be nothing to do with the $200,000 if there's a cover up. It could be the fact that millions of dollars has been spent on this investigation on things like what J. Edgar Hoover signed off on to get the plane, this specialized plane, to fly the route multiple times to take photographs, but then none of the photographs apparently turned out. So did that plane actually do these things at all, or did you just claim the expenses to
more money back? That's
fraudulently
what I originally thought.
Fraudulently acquire money for other motives, because there's been millions and millions of dollars invested into this investigation with nothing. There's nothing to show for it. Even the things that they were spending money on, like this photo thing that they'd done, nothing. It didn't work. So did they even really do it?
Well,
or did they just claim they'd done it and the photos didn't work? But we done it, but it cost $20 million. But sorry, no
that was
photos.
my original thought, even before investigating it this time. In the past, I thought that didn't. I don't think it really happened. I think there might have been someone in front and as this person.
Because as we know,
I thought it was some kind of money making scheme from the,
as we know, there are
three-letter agencies.
Some of these agencies. There's quite a lot of money that's used for things. You don't even know where it goes and what they're using it for. And there was like all that money that went missing, and it was announced just before 9/11, and then 9/11 happened, and then it was like billions of dollars that was like missing for the budget.
Never got to the,
and then it's just like it was completely forgotten about.
Yeah, and we see that all the time, don't we? And we know what they do. But
is it worth throwing $200,000 out of a plane to be found in 1981, rotten away, to get millions and millions of dollars through the apparent investigation that you're doing to find out where it was when you know where it was the entire time? Maybe.
Some of these ex-FBI agents who were employed at the time, they actually wrote books as well, so they'll make money again.
It's like they've went out of their way to find the most idiotic moron
possible, yeah,
to lead this investigation.
Yeah.
And they did find him with Himmel's twat, and he's just an idiot. He's an absolute idiot. And if you watch him over the years, he comes out with the most ridiculous things. One minute he's got no idea what he's doing. No idea what he's doing. So how the hell this man got a job in law enforcement, never mind the FBI, is beyond me, unless that's why he got the job, because he's just so stupid to figure out that he's just there as a plant to fuck it all up while they go and do what they like.
Yeah. Yeah. But then again, that might be the idea. Yeah. He may not,
but that's my opinion, don't come from me. Just because they work for a government agency doesn't mean that they're nice, trustworthy people that wouldn't do anything wrong. And we know that from experience. And that's not a conspiracy theory. That's just hard facts. It's happened over and over and over again. And you just need to look at any politician in the world. If you go into politics, you go into politics to actually serve your community and do things to make your community a better place and make your country a better place, then you shouldn't go into that job as a public servant. And then at the end of your term as a public servant, you're a millionaire? How did you become a millionaire? Or you like, what? How have you got millions of dollars when you're a public servant and you're supposed to just be a politician? That's not your wages. That's not what you're getting for a salary. Where's this money coming from? Because they're all bloody millionaires when they come out, aren't they?
I think this mystery isn't going to be solved because it's like some of them things, like you say, some of them government cover-ups and presidents and things like that in the past and governments where they convolute it. When people start tracking them down, they just put loads of more obstacles in the way and convolute up even more, so you never get to it. And that's going to be like these stories where you never get to in the past with the UFOs and things like that, where
they don't want to solve it because they know exactly what happened. They know we did it, but they don't want you to know. And they actually benefit immensely. They benefit immensely for all these dozens and dozens of books and dozens of stories and dozens of suspects. They benefit from that because there's so many people coming forward. And I mean, these plants as well, like this she coming forward and saying it was me, and this person saying it was me, because it's causes the confusion, and nobody can actually pin down where it was because there's this just influx of suspects after suspects and book after book after book.
Well, when some person mentions somebody, they shut it down completely. 1 minute, the next minute they'll accept any option. Oh yeah, it could be. Yeah, they do meet the criteria. Even though remotely. So, and then they bring it back again and then say, no, because that's what they do to add confusion. And then there's all these people coming forward. And I think no one's going to even believe them if they are. Like UFOs, like if you see a video that's not been made by a potato phone and dodgy little mobile phone with the UFO and an alien, and it has a clear picture because everyone say, well, you can never see them. That's Photoshop. It's not real.
Yeah, they went on for years saying that, well, the pictures are crap, they're too blurry. And then when they're not blurry, they're like, well, you photoshopped that.
Yeah, that's too realistic, And I think that's the problem here. I think that's what we're going to be up against. No one's going to believe anyone. Cry wolf and all that. Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's no conclusion to this because it's been that convoluted over the years and there's been that much bullshit thrown in and all these suspects and people saying it was me, it was my brother, it was my sister, it was my cousin, it was my next door neighbour's dog's wife's cousin's grandma. Look at there's just
it was Kelly.
It was Kelly. We're never going to know, but I think we do know that there's something dodgy going on underneath.
That's a shame.
If you peel back all the layers, there's something fundamentally dodgy at the centre of it, and I do think that the FBI or somebody high up in government, perhaps Comey, knows exactly who did this, and they've known from the day it happened, perhaps even before it happened, because they knew it was going to happen. And we are never going to get the truth because it's been that convoluted over the years. And that is the case of Dan Cooper, who
It
is
is.
known as DB Cooper, because apparently they got it wrong, like they got a lot of things wrong, conveniently in this case.
Yeah.
And it could
That'll
be
just
bloody
remain a
anyone.
mystery, I think. And it's a shame. I thought I was going to solve it, but no.
You're not supposed to, though.
Well,
and they benefited from all the bullshit, really.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And we will be back next Tuesday with Danielle. We'll be back from our hot balls. And I believe it's a mystery next week, isn't it? Because this was actually a crime, although it is a bit of a mystery crime thing.
It's both,
we'll
isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Hybrid
mystery
episode.
for you next week. And I've got two in mind. I've not narrowed down exactly what it is, but we'll leave you to ponder what you think happened on that flight back in the 70s. But,
I apologise if you can hear the rain through that.
Yeah.
Things
Unfortunately, I can't control the weather.
No.
I beyond my control.
All right, everybody.
All that remains to be said is we will see you next Tuesday. Thank you very much for watching. Please leave a little thumbs up, like this video, share it with your friends, and go and check out our website. We like the traffic to the website, and go and look at my shop. Look at the little picture that I put up there of Danielle and a little Bible that I wrote. It's all amazing, and it took me loads of time, so at least have a flick through, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Yep,
and we
see
love
next
you all.
Tuesday. See you later.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.